Welcome, everyone, to episode 17 of another Jags podcast, the number one off-season Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. We are proud to say, and we are also proud to say that it will eventually be the number one in-season Jaguars podcast. We're confident of that. Glad to have y'all listening in to this episode. Tonight we're going to be talking about the defensive line and all its glorious riches. We are so excited to be talking about that tonight. But before we get to that, then there were two. Yeah. There's only two of us tonight. Yeah. It's Jason. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Last of the Mohicans.
That's right. and then there's me.
Yeah.
So Joey is out of town on family vacation. It is the summer, so we're going to give him a pass on that. Robert's out as well tonight. So it's just the two of us holding down the fort. But we're okay with that because we have a lot to talk about tonight.
I mean, we like to talk the most anyways.
We do.
So it worked out. Now we don't have people on our way now.
We like to talk the most because we have the most important things to say.
Absolutely. We don't have to be nudging Joey and be like, shut up.
Yeah, right. and waking up Robert.
Yeah, exactly. So it should go pretty smoothly tonight.
I think it will. We don't have any other topics tonight. We're talking about the defensive line. And I said already, we're excited to talk about it because there's just, it's an embarrassment of riches. But before we get into it, and we're biting at the bit here, before we get into it, we want to remind everyone about our social media. It's blowing up. Listen, Jason does an incredible job on Twitter, posting all sorts of video and info about our team. If you're not following us on Twitter, if you're not on Twitter, sign up for Twitter just to follow us because you will not regret it. There's so many good things. It's worth it. It's very worth it. So, and to find us on Twitter, we're at Another Jags Pod. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram at Another Jags Podcast. If you follow us on any of those, that's where we launch our episodes every week. You can find us on SoundCloud, iTunes, all other podcasting platforms. And again, we just want to invite you to spread the word on this. If you're a Jaguars fan and you want to build the hype for the team, let people know about this podcast. Again, not to build our own ego. We just want everyone talking about the Jags because we don't get a lot of national recognition. So we're going to recognize ourselves in this great city. So let people know. And for those that are listening, man, thank you. It's awesome. So I think that's it, right? Any other kind of general announcements?
No, I mean, I think that's it. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, well, I'm going to hand it off to you real quick, and you just kind of break down our defensive line, what we do, the schemes we run, and all that fun stuff.
I mean, I'm just going to be quick with it because one thing when we talk about defensive linemen and like the techniques they play, really each coach kind of has their own scheme. Like how one coach numbers the defensive line techniques could be completely different than another coach. So we could argue that Malik Jackson's a 3 technique, but it does no good because it depends on which coach's scheme you're talking about. From coach to coach, they'll change what a 3 technique is. So, generally they're kind of the same thing, but especially with the Jaguars defense, how versatile everyone is. They move around to different spots. It's, they could be anywhere. But generally, we'll call it a base formation, which really means nothing. But just to give you kind of a picture in your head, we start 4 defensive linemen, obviously, in a 4-3 defense. We have our strong side end, which is usually played by Calais Campbell. And basically what that means is he plays the defensive end position on the strong side. So the side that the tight end is on, or which is the open of the field, or the fullback, because generally that's where the ball will get ran to, and you want someone that can hold their ground pretty well. He can be a good player like Yannick Ngakoue, but somebody that's just pure speed, you're going to put him on the weak side. So that's where Yannick Ngakoue plays that weak side defensive end. So, and he typically plays, a 4 technique over the tackle. He might play outside of his shoulder, which is called a 5 technique. Then we move to the interior. We have Marcel Darius, who plays the shade defensive lineman, and that's basically on the outside shoulder of the center is all that means. So depending on the formation, if it's an under front or an over front, the Jaguars defensive line, they'll line up Marcel Darius to the shade. Or some people call it a 1, and, you never know. And then finally we have Malik Jackson, who plays the weak side defensive tackle. He's basically just there to hold his ground. He doesn't really, not so much concerned with getting into the backfield as far as he is kind of clogging a gap. So that's more of his responsibility. And then it's up to the linebacker to kind of fill in behind him. And where the linebackers line up and where the defensive linemen line up could change from play to play. But generally, we could get into the technicalities of the shades and the 3 eyes and the 2 techniques and the 9 techniques. But, I saw plays where Yannick Ngakoue was standing up behind Darius when he blitzed. So there's no point in arguing about that kind of stuff. But just know they're versatile, and those are our 4 starters.
All right. That's a great summation. So tonight we are talking about one thing and one thing only, and that is our defensive line. It is a position group that demands that we only talk about them because, it's obvious that the defensive line is the strongest part of our team. Jason, would you
Absolutely.
argue that? Yeah.
Absolutely.
And let me just open by saying this. Jacksonville Jaguars 2018 defensive line, best in the league?
I would say like by a long shot. Like I'm trying to think of who would compete, and maybe I know people like hype up the Vikings D-line. The Rams D-line is probably going to be pretty good with Sue and Donald, but top to bottom and depth included, I don't think you'll find them better than the Jaguars.
No, I mean, I looked at the Rams as well because they were the first ones that came to mind because of the interior. I think Sue and Donald are probably arguably the two best interior defensive linemen on the same team. But across the board, they don't have nearly the defensive ends that the Jags have, and they certainly don't have the depth. And I agree. I think it is I don't think it's even a question that the Jacksonville Jaguars have the best defensive line in the NFL. I will go so far as to say this. I think all four will make the Pro Bowl next year.
All four?
All four.
Man, you don't see that happen very often.
No. I'm not saying they're all going to start, going to be the ones, but I think Ngakoue, who did make the Pro Bowl as an alternate, will make it right off the bat. Campbell as well. And, you're, I think, probably, based off what has been said over our previous podcast, your favorite defensive lineman might be, is it Marcel Darius?
I really like Marcel Darius. It's hard to say he's my favorite, but he's undervalued. People don't give him the respect he deserves. Like, you got to remember, before he was brought in, our defensive line against the run wasn't that great. We were getting a bunch of sacks, but we weren't that great against the run.
It cost us the Jets game.
Yeah, absolutely. And probably that first Titans game too.
Yeah.
So I would say that and as soon as Darius came in, it was like fixed, instantly fixed. He's really, really good. He gets paid a lot of money for a reason. He's the reason why.
So I mean, I think he being on the Jags team for a full year, I think is going to get him the opportunity to get into the Pro Bowl. Then Malik Jackson is a Pro Bowler, so why not have all those guys be on? I'm not saying that necessarily will be all pro, but we've learned with Andrew Norwell, you can be one without being the other.
Oh, absolutely.
And so I think they will all be in the Pro Bowl next year. Every single starting defensive lineman for the Jags, which I don't know when that happens, if it ever happens. So that would be amazing if it did.
Athlon has a ranks of defensive ends, and they have guys like in the AFC, Cam Hayward from Pittsburgh, Jarrell Casey from Tennessee, Leonard Williams from the Jets, like those J.J. Watt. I mean, I don't know. Those guys get a lot of hype because they're names. They're big names. So, I mean, I feel like all four of them could play at a Pro Bowl level, but you know how that is.
Right.
They try to distribute the representatives.
What do you think? What do you think about J.J. Watt this year? Since you brought him up, what do you see him doing in the NFL in general this coming up year? Are you scared of him anymore as a Jags fan? Does he scare you?
Trying to think of the last player that's had 2 consecutive years out with injuries and come back. Like, I can't think of any. You don't see it happen very often.
No.
If you miss 2 entire seasons due to injury, it's really hard to get back to form. And if you do, it takes you at least a year.
Right.
And he's not really like a young chicken. So, I mean, if he doesn't have that much time. So, I don't see him being a threat that he once was.
Not to mention his injuries are back and neck surgery. I mean, those are major.
Yeah.
When you're playing the defensive line and you have these 300-pound guys pushing on you, I can't imagine what that does to your neck and to your back. So, everyone's hyping him because he's J.J. Watt, but I mean, I think he's on the decline, really.
He's a good guy, and that's what gets you Pro Bowl votes, I feel like.
Yeah.
You know?
He's going to do stuff. He's going to do stuff for charity, which is to be commended. Certainly not going to hate on him for that. Applaud him for that, actually. But when it comes to game time, he doesn't really scare me anymore. No. Really, I'd say Whitney Merciless probably is more of a threat.
Yeah. That dude's always making plays for the Texans.
Mm-hmm.
Clowney's kind of come around for sure, but Merciless is like fly. I mean, he's just that one of those players that the stats don't really back up how good he is. Like, he's always around the ball making a play and things like that. But I'd take our guys over him. How
many more sacks does Yannick Ngakoue have than Jadeveon Clowney this year? How many more sacks does Ngakoue have?
Oh, I would say he's probably going to have. Oh man, because Clowney's going to get sacks.
He is.
I mean, I would say I'd give him about maybe 3 to 5.
3 to 5 more.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's safe. And again, Clowney was the first overall pick in the draft. Ngakoue picked in the 3rd round. And we're talking about how many more sacks Ngakoue is going to have.
Absolutely. Not to mention the strip sacks.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Joey's not with us tonight, so we don't have our chip on the shoulder guy. But if there's anyone on the defensive line that has a chip on his shoulder, it is Unique Ngakoue.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think he gets bigger and bigger every single year.
Yeah.
When we started this podcast, 17 weeks ago now, which is hard to imagine.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I remember saying somewhere in the beginning that I was a little nervous about Ngakoue coming up in this year. That has whatever concerns I had are completely out the window now. I expect him to have a huge year, and I think my concern was that I didn't want to make it too high and then be let down, because that's what we as Jaguar fans fight against always, is having high expectations than being let down.
Yeah.
So it really had nothing to do with him as a player. But, I mean, every time you see him in the offseason, he's working. He was on Good Morning Football on NFL Network, I believe, this morning. You can just hear the hunger in his voice to be a great player. And I think it's going to happen. I think it's going to translate on the field. And we're going to see him be a premier, top tier. Not that he wasn't last year, because really he probably was. But even take that next step of elite defensive ends in the NFL. He's mastered the strip sack, which is kind of his calling card. But what did he have, 12 sacks last year? Off the top of my head, I think it was 12.
Well, including playoffs, it was 12, right?
Okay.
Because he had 2 more than Dante Fowler, I think.
Okay, yeah. And Dante had 10, including playoffs.
Right.
So I think you're going to see him sniffing 16, between 16 and 20.
Man, that would be amazing.
I'd put the over-under at 16.
Including playoffs?
Yeah,
okay.
We'll say including
playoffs. Oh, man.
Because they're getting to the playoffs.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I mean, 15 comes to mind for me, but I guess it's only one off. So
it's only that's why it's the over/under.
Yeah.
You would. Here's the thing about why he can do 16 to 20, in my opinion, because you have the rest of the defensive line.
Yeah.
So it's not like they can just zone in on him and double team him. Well, you can't do that. Not to mention the fact that we also have these great corners and great secondary and great linebackers behind him that are going to give them extra time to rush the passer. All of that stuff plays together. And I believe with his relentless work ethic and pursuit to be great, it is going to be seen this year more than ever. Not to mention the fact that that second contract is on the horizon.
Yeah.
And that's big time, and especially for a 3rd round pick.
Yeah.
Ramsey got his 5th overall pick, 1st round money. Ngakoue didn't get that.
Yeah.
He's not making nearly the money Ramsey is now, but especially coming in on that second contract, he's going to be even more motivated. But to be honest, that's probably, in my opinion, just based off what we know of him, I don't even think that's really what motivates him. I just think being great.
So let me ask you, do you think him being on a contract year, do you have any concern about him playing like not to be injured?
Not even a little bit.
Okay.
Not even a little bit. I think he only has one motor, and that's all the way.
Yeah.
What about you? Do you think so?
I just feel like in your human nature, like you see a guy like Cam Newton not dive for the fumble in the playoff game, and it's like he's one of the most fiercest competitors you could think of. But
he is, but he's also kind of a diva too.
Yeah,
I mean,
but just human nature, man. It's like he has a chip on his shoulder, but now that he's proven himself, is he gonna kind of take his foot off the gas? I don't think he will. It's just something to kind of to worry about. We gotta have something to worry about.
Yeah, that's true. This is like the nitpicky,
nitpicky,
which we're gonna be doing all night
Yeah.
because we are stacked at defensive line. I mean, there's not really a negative you can even say about them. The only one would, I guess, be Campbell's age. He's 31.
Yeah.
Or
how much money we have tied up in them. That's probably the biggest.
Yes, that is. But when you have talent, you have to pay for it. So you can't have both. And to the Jaguars' credit, they're already beginning to think about the future without those guys. And what has to be the quietest first round pick that the Jags have ever made, and Taven Bryan, like, we haven't heard a thing about him.
Yeah.
Not a thing about him all offseason.
Probably because it might have been because it's drafted so late, even though it was a first round pick. But he's like the X factor right now.
Yeah.
I mean, all the videos say he looks good and athletic, and just thinking about that, that's a scary defensive line. All those guys, and then the second unit of Taven Bryan, Dante Fowler, Avery Jones, and Dwayne Smoot. Like, you take that D-line over a lot of D-lines.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's the second unit.
Let me ask you this. That's a great point. If you're a Colts, Titans, or Texans fan, do you take our second-string defensive line over your starters right now?
I think they all have like one player that they would rather have, but as far as like top to bottom unit, I think that's a better trade than what they have. I mean, outside of Jarrell Casey, maybe Houston you don't. But
yeah, because of Clowney.
Yeah, Clowney, Merciless, and Watt. But I mean, if you're the Colts, I mean, you got
the Colts. You do in a heartbeat.
Yeah, that's easy. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, there's probably a lot of teams, even outside our division, I think, that would take that. Because Dante Fowler, I mean, 10 sacks last year. A lot of teams would kill for a 10-sack end.
Mm-hmm.
And Dwayne Smoot is young. I mean, he's a high motor guy. Avery Jones, young. He played pretty well. I mean,
they just signed him, not this offseason that we're in right now, but last offseason, wasn't it? To an extension.
Yeah, it was like a cheap deal. Just to he's that nose. I mean, he's not a nose tackle.
He plays well when he's in the game.
He's the big tackle, so he plays on the weak side over the guard.
Right.
So if it's run to the back side, he's basically just a big body there to turn it all away. Which that's where you see those big guys play. But
right. He comes in for Darius.
Right, and Darius does that same thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy because a lot of times these players get like locked into a certain position, like a tackle or an end or a weak side tackle. But I mean, watching games, looking at the defensive line, I mean, they're lined up all over the place. Todd Wash has them just all. I mean, like there's plays when Campbell is. I mean, they got three defensive linemen lined up on like the left side. So like between the center and the tackle, they got three, and they got just one end lined up wide, and it's like, what? Like where are they going with this? And then they'll stun a D end to the other end. We posted on Twitter. Calais Campbell had a sweet sack on Jared Goff where he dropped back and stunted all the way to the outside of the opposite tackle of his and got to the quarterback. It's like, man, the versatility of our guys is amazing.
That is a 31-year-old defensive end chasing down a second-year quarterback.
Yeah, when he was like 30-something in the top 100 we were talking about last week.
Yeah, 38, I think 35.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, that's the thing. Like we keep saying Campbell's age, but he didn't play like he was 30 and older last year. He had his best year. And
it was his best year, so hopefully it's not an anomaly because the year before that I think he only had like 7 or 6.5 sacks, something like that.
Do you think it is? Do you think it is an anomaly? Do you think he's going to come back and produce the same numbers?
I think it'd be hard to even replicate what he did. I mean, there's no secret having the secondary behind him he had helped a lot too.
Right.
I mean, that's probably why you saw his numbers shoot up. But I mean, the same secondary's coming back next year, so and they're probably going to improve if anything. So it probably wouldn't be crazy to think. I just don't see him replicating those numbers. I don't think they'll give him as many snaps this year. I think they'll kind of bring in Taven Bryan, fill in for him some snaps, and I think you'll see Dwayne Smoot play a bigger role this year as well. I think they like him. So
yeah,
it's.
I actually like Smoot. I think he's got a lot of potential there.
Yeah, he is. He's very outspoken about like things on Twitter and all that. He has his own like vlog which is okay. I mean, you kind of want your players to be elite if they're going to be doing that.
Yeah. But he's already thinking about like retirement. Trying to build a foundation.
Yeah,
there.
Exactly.
So let me ask you this then, really quick, before we're not moving on to anything. We're talking about defensive line all night. But what would be then for Calais Campbell a successful 2018 season for you?
For me, I think if he just had 12 sacks.
Okay, that's 2 less than what he had this year.
Yeah, that's successful. I think I expect him to be around like 8 or 9, realistically.
I think double digits for me I'd be happy with. If he gets 10 sacks again.
I mean, didn't he had 2 games where he had like what, 9 of his sacks were in two different games.
Right. The first game of the year he had 4.
Yeah. And then he had
4
getting against the Colts, didn't he?
Yeah.
So it's hard to do. That's hard to do. But
it is.
I think you'll see the sacks just being distributed along to other guys on the line.
Yeah, that's a good point. But at the same time, kind of going back to the depth, that will benefit him. That the fact that he is a little bit older, and I don't want to belabor that point, but it is kind of, we have to find something to talk about with these guys that we're concerned with. Having that depth is going to allow him to play younger because he's going to be more fresh. He's going to be able to come out there. They do have Taven Bryan that they can put on the field, which if there's one thing I'm looking forward to in preseason, it's him. Yeah. I just want to see him play. Yeah. I just don't know much about him, see what he can do. Obviously, they like him. They drafted him in the first round, so having him behind him, I think, is going to allow Campbell to be fresh. We kind of saw a little drop-off with him, and as you do most players by the end of the season, but He did get a little quieter at the end of the year. I think that might not be the case this year because he won't get as many snaps and will be more fresh. And I think they're going to be okay with that because their goal is not to, win September. It's to win December, January, and ultimately that first week in February. So we'll see what happens at that position, but I'm looking forward to it. In every position group that we've talked about so far, which is all except for wide receiver and quarterback, we've looked at every position group on the Jags, on the offensive defense. If you haven't listened to any of our episodes, go back and you can hear us talk about all those. What the one concern that we have for all of those other position groups is depth. What happens if Jalen Ramsey gets injured? What happens if Telvin Smith goes down? What do we do next? What happens, if Leonard Fournette goes down and blah, blah, blah. That is not a concern. I mean, obviously you want your starters in, but if one of them goes down, the sky is not going to fall. In my opinion, at least, if it's a 3 or 4 game where Marcel Darius is out, well, we'll bring in Avery Jones and we'll be okay.
Yeah.
If Malik Jackson goes down, we'll bring in Smoot. We'll be okay.
Let me ask you, who needs to have another good year on the D-line in order for us to have repeat success?
Wow. I think it's Ngakoue. I think having that speed end guy that's going to consistently pressure the quarterback is going to cause turnovers. It's going to set the tone for the team. It's going to put the opposing offense in second and long and third and long and continue to give our offense the ball. Darius is stopping the run. Malik is doing his thing, but he doesn't have to have a huge year. Campbell, sets that edge, but I just think if Ngakoue is clicking on all cylinders, then watch out.
Yeah.
Watch out. So I would put my chips on him and bet on him.
I would say for me it would have to be Malik Jackson, only because I guess I'm looking at it a little differently. If we don't get production out of Ngakoue, I think we'll get production out of Fowler, and if we don't get production out of one of them, I think Campbell steps up. I'm less concerned at the edge, whereas on the interior, Malik Jackson, is one of those underrated, quiet guys, and the fact that he didn't make the top 100 is offensive because of how good he is.
Right.
And he steps up in crunch time. He's consistent. He's been one of our best players for years now.
Mm-hmm.
And when he came over, he got a lot of hype, but then he's kind of gotten lost in the shuffle with all these other players on the defense. But he makes a huge difference on our defense. And just what he opens up for everybody else. The fact that he gets double-teamed almost every single play. People don't realize the emphasis of the double team goes on him because of how quick he is on the interior. We posted a video on Twitter today of him getting a sack. And, the dude just is one of the fastest big guys I've ever seen. And you don't have to necessarily be fast. You just have to be quick. And that's one thing that is underrated for him is his quickness. His at the snap, getting to the backfield is he's elite. He really is. So, but only just because I'm looking at it from the point of view that I think other DNs could step up for those guys.
Yeah. You had said you're not concerned about Ngakoue because of Fowler, which is a good point, except are you at all concerned with Fowler's being injured right now?
Nah, I'm not. Because usually if it was a big deal, you would hear more about it, and you haven't really heard much about this.
Right, okay.
It's a contract year for him. He's gonna I'll just go ahead and say it now. I'm gonna make a prediction.
Okay, I like these.
I think Dante Fowler has more sacks than Yannick Ngakoue this year.
Really?
Yep.
Because it's a contract year?
I think that
technically it's a contract year for both of them.
You're right. We talked about this a little bit in our Dante Fowler podcast, but something in me just.
You love Dante.
I think he's a better player. I think he's a better player. I like how Ngakoue gets the ball out. That's underrated. I even saw a play today where he got a sack on Jimmy Garoppolo, and he actually, when Jimmy Garoppolo was going to the ground, he the ball came out, but it was bang bang play, and the refs didn't even review it. But it was that's a strip sack he didn't even get credited for, and it's he still had one.
Right.
That's amazing, and I love Yannick Ngakoue, but I just think. I have this little feeling that Fowler is going to just blow up this year.
Hey, I would love to see that happen. I would love to see it happen. I'm wondering. Let me go ahead. Finish your thought.
I was just saying, I could see Ngakoue getting 8 or 9 sacks and Fowler getting 12 or 13.
Okay.
And I don't think it'll be a big difference big difference between the two. But I think that Fowler will have more.
Okay.
And I may eat crow for this. So you come next offseason.
Hey, listen, have you heard any of my bold predictions? I'm not gonna call you out if that doesn't happen. I hope it. I don't. want to say I hope it does. I hope they're both productive. But let me throw out a hypothetical to you. Let's say we are 8 games in, and Ngakoue has 6 sacks, 3 of which are strip sacks. Okay, so that would put him by the end of the regular season. He would have 12. All right, he's on pace to have 12 sacks.
What he had this year, so it's not.
Yeah, okay. And Fowler has, we'll say 4. All right, at the halfway point, which is right around the trade deadline. Do you trade Fowler?
No. Because, I mean, what's the best you're going to get out of a player like that? A third-round pick? I know you can do a lot with that, but it's not far off to believe that a depth at D-line could win you the Super Bowl. So if he's the difference between winning a Super Bowl and not, and then getting a third-round pick, I mean, unless someone just offers you something crazy, like they did for Brandon Cooks, offer you a first-round pick, I mean, you take that. But, I mean, I don't know how they got first-round pick out of Brandon Cooks. That blew my mind.
Yeah.
Rams
are desperate.
Yeah. That's a good question. But no, I don't think you trade him. I think you keep him on your roster because he potentially could win you games in the playoffs.
Okay.
What about you?
And I agree. I would not trade him. But here's my concern about that is then who do you pay?
Yeah.
If you have both of them,
yeah.
How do you justify keeping both of those guys and paying both of them?
You can't.
Now, technically, it is absolutely a contract year for Fowler, but they can wait and renegotiate Ngakoue the following year. So it's not like they have to re-sign Ngakoue next offseason. They don't have to. They can wait another year. But Fowler, they do. They're pretty much out of time with him after this season. So you have to really look at the books and say, is this something that we, 1, can do, and 2, want to do? Do we want to invest that much money in 2 guys that play relatively the exact same position?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I mean, I guess it's a good problem to have, but at the same time, you don't just want to lose a guy. You don't want to let him walk.
Right.
So if you can get something in return, if you know that you're not going to pay him because you have Ngakoue there, maybe that might be something that they look at. And I'm just playing devil's advocate here.
We always talk about this. The Jaguars never seem to use it, but there's always the franchise tag. So, like, worst comes to worst, they can't figure something out. They want to keep Fowler around for a year. They can sign him to a 1-year. I'm sure the tag next year offseason will be around $16 or $17 million, which is a lot, but it's only 1 year, so it's not like it's like screwing your books up.
Right.
So that's always an option with Fowler as well. But it's not very often that Jags use that. They seem big on just getting players committed and signing them, and then
which I like, and then letting guys walk.
Yeah,
that's what they did with Allen Robinson. Yeah. I don't know. I'm very, very interested to see what comes of Fowler this year because he was a 3rd overall pick by the Jags. Then he tears his ACL. I feel like we really only got to see his ability last year.
Right.
That next year after his injury, which technically it was his 2nd year, really it was his rookie year. In terms of playing on the field. Yeah, that's kind of a wash. Like you were just saying a minute ago about injuries and guys coming back. It takes a while.
Yeah.
So I think like last year was that year for him where we got to see it. And so if you look at it like that, I mean, this year he should take a huge step forward.
Mm-hmm.
But the question is he going to get on the field to do it because you got Ngakoue? Let me ask you this because you're the X's and O's guy. Is there any formations where Ngakoue and Fowler are on the field at the same time playing opposite ends?
Yeah. It's called like a lightning package or they'll call it something like that. NASCAR package is what they'll call it. On like 3rd and long, they'll put in like 3 D ends and a D tackle. So you could see like they would take Darius off and put in Fowler.
3rd and long like 3rd and 8 or 3rd and long like 3rd and 15?
Definitely 3rd and 15. But 3rd and 8 maybe, depending on like tendencies of the other team. But you don't see those too often. But maybe a handful of times in a game you would see that. But it happens, and it happened quite a bit last year, especially toward the end of the year when Campbell was kind of injured in the playoffs a little bit. You saw a lot more of Dante Fowler, and I think that's why he kind of put up better numbers when he got more opportunities. And I think that's a big part of it. Only playing at 400 snaps last year. He's fresh still.
Yeah.
I mean, I watched him at the University of Florida, pretty much every game he played. And last year was the first, and this is what I try to tell people, last year was the first time you saw what you saw in college.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you saw, like, him using his athleticism to just straight beat people. I mean, he did that in college all the time. First, he was just disruptive in the backfield. And that's why he was drafted so high. His film was, like, eye-popping.
Yeah.
He didn't have a lot of sacks in college, like, numbers-wise, but he was just so disruptive. And you kind of saw that last year because he actually forced a lot of sacks that he didn't get credit for. just because of how quickly he got into the backfield, making quarterbacks step up into the pocket and things like that. So not to beat a dead horse, but I think Fowler will go on to another team next year and have a pretty good career, and I'll be happy for him. But I understand the situation the Jaguars are in. You got a guy like Ngakoue who's shown you more, and you got to roll with your guys that are out there. I totally understand that. It's just the best problem to have, too many good people.
Right. It is a good problem to have, and you can't keep them all the time. And you did say earlier there's a ton of money already tied up. So who isn't here on the defensive line for 2019? What players are gone?
Well, if we're looking at the books right now, Calais Campbell, Malik Jackson, and Marcel Darius are 3 of our 4 highest paid players on the team. Bouye is the 3rd highest. Darius is the 4th highest. But the way the contracts are structured, they do tie up a bunch of money. I mean, Campbell's at $15 million next year, and Malik Jackson is at $13.5 next year, and that's a lot of money. Darius is $9.9 million. Dante Fowler, 3.6. So, it's not a lot, but he's about to get paid.
Yeah.
So he's going to be up there. But, I think that's one of the reasons why they brought in Taven Bryan is they'll probably be able to alleviate some of that cap room. I could see Darius getting restructured to a cheaper deal because he's worth his money, but he kind of understands his role.
Right.
And those big defensive tackles that are just play 2 gaps aren't really paid like they used to be. Fletcher Cox gets a lot of money, but they're not paying that position as much as they used to, and like Albert Haynesworth and these guys, did that. So he's more of like a Vince Wilfork than he is an Albert Haynesworth, really. Just a guy that you can't move, and you want a guy that you can't move because then you have to basically spill your run play out to the other parts of the defense.
You can't move him, and then he slides off your block and makes the tackle.
Yeah.
That's what's so impressive with him. He doesn't just occupy a space. He can get off the block and make a tackle. It's impressive for a guy his size. I think really in terms of who they keep and who they don't keep, it comes down to if they win the Super Bowl next year or not.
That's true.
Which is an amazing
thing to say.
Factor.
It really is.
To have to put into an equation, And I think if they just, let's play some scenarios here. Let's say they make it to the playoffs and they lose a close game in the first round, which an early exit, heartbreaking, which I don't want to really think about that, but
don't say that.
I think they reload and they say, all right, let's do this again.
Yeah.
That was not supposed to happen, and we're going to come back. Now, and then the other way is if they win the Super Bowl or get to the Super Bowl, they may cut a couple guys and start bringing some younger guys in like Taven Bryan because he's way more affordable. I want to believe that guys like Campbell and Marcel Darius and even Malik, who are getting paid so much money, love it here. There's no state income tax. They've bought into what's happening here. They just want to stay because they enjoy it, which I know that sounds incredibly naive, but these guys have made their money, and they're a lot. Campbell is getting a little long in the tooth, so there's not going to be a ton of suitors for him. They're going to pay him an exorbitant amount of money. I wonder what his options are going to be at age then 32. Is it going to be that much more, or would he rather stay here on a contender, kind of continue to be a player coach to Brian and other guys and still make good money, still live in a great city, warm city, and kind of take less money. I don't know. We'll see. But a lot of it depends on if they win the Super Bowl or not.
Yeah. He did come to Jacksonville because of the money.
He did.
They offered him a lot
and
more
but he
money.
got it. He got that money. And more power to him. Listen.
Yeah.
By all means, do that. But he got his money.
Malik Jackson, same thing. Followed money.
Malik Jackson said he came for the money.
Yeah.
He's like, what's
the point?
Who are the Jacksonville Jaguars? Where do I sign?
What's the point of telling people lies?
I know.
Everyone knows it's a professional business.
Some people freaked out when he said that. Like, come on.
Yeah, exactly.
$96 million? Of course that's why he signed here.
Yeah, hey, for that, I'd start podcasting about the Colts for $96 million.
Right, exactly. Would you put on a Titans jersey?
Oh, okay. All right. We're not talking that crazy.
So there's a bunch of questions about next year, but thankfully as Jag fans, we don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
We have 2018, and the future for the defensive line is just incredibly bright. It's the anchor of our team. It's what the entire defense is built around. And there's depth. It's awesome.
Having 2 elite corners really helps as well. A lot of coverage. It goes back and forth.
Yep.
But being on gosh, what a great situation to just have like an amazing D-line and then an amazing secondary as well.
Yeah. It's going to, listen, something that we haven't really talked about on this entire podcast this year is the amount of turnovers that the defense created last year. I mean, they had a ton of turnovers. And I think that's going to happen again because when teams are behind, they have to throw. They start, getting a little desperate. We have speed everywhere. We have a stout defensive line that is going to create pressure on the quarterback, which is going to force that quarterback to make bad throws. We have corners who can cover, who are then going to intercept those bad throws. We have defensive ends that are going to have strip sacks, causing fumbles, and quick linebackers that are going to scoop those up. I mean, it's just going to be the same story. I don't think there's going to be a letdown on turnovers this year. If anything, I think we may see more because, again, most of our players are young and are getting better. That's crazy.
How exciting was it last year, like, finally being a team that forced turnovers?
Oh, man.
I mean, it just gave you celebrating, like, big offensive plays is awesome, but, like, a turnover is, like, awesome.
Yeah.
Like, when that happens, like, whether you're in, like, a restaurant or, like, whatever, or the stadium, like, the place explodes.
Right.
Because it's, like, that's a huge turning point. Like, that's how you win games is you force turnovers. And the Jags, I mean, we've never been a team to do that. I mean, we actually ranked 6th in the league on plus minus. So we were at plus 10 for turnovers versus giveaways. That's awesome. I mean, we forced 21 interceptions.
Gosh.
And recovered 12 fumbles.
That's unbelievable. 21, is that right?
Yeah, takeaways.
21 takeaways?
21 interception takeaways, yeah.
That's almost 2 a game. It's almost
yeah.
21 interceptions. Is that including the playoffs?
It has to be.
Ramsey got one in the Bills game. Miles Jack got one in the Pittsburgh game. I'm just off the top of my head. There might have been more in the Pittsburgh game. There might have been more in the Bills game. Those are just the ones I remember right now.
There was a couple in those games.
And did we get an interception in the New England game? Did we pick off Tom Brady?
I don't think so.
I don't either. God, that would have been awesome.
We had that fumble where Miles Jack was rolled down.
I mean, Jalen Ramsey alone had 5 or 6. I think Boye had 4 or 5. That's almost 10 just between the two of them.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think. We had
Telvin had a few.
Between the two Steelers games,
Gibson had a ton.
Yeah. Okay, Bouye had 6 interceptions. Ramsey had 4.
Okay, that's 10 between the two. He only had 4? I thought he had 5. Maybe the 5th was in the playoffs.
Yeah, so maybe... Yeah,
I'm pretty sure he had 5.
This isn't playoffs,
okay.
I don't think.
So let's say that's 11.
Okay, and then Gibson had 4.
15.
Church had 4.
18.
Telvin had 3.
21.
Yeah.
Wow. 21.
So, 21 interceptions.
I think they have more. You want my bold prediction? I'm saying 25 interceptions.
25 interceptions.
Yeah.
I mean, that's everyone in your secondary giving at least 4. That's
funny.
crazy.
It's funny that no one on the defensive line had an interception. Usually one of those big boys scoops up one.
There was
on a deflection or something. That's one thing that we never got a deflected.
Yeah.
Those like when the ball's up in the air for 20 minutes?
Yeah.
We never got one of those.
We almost had a couple. I remember almost having a couple.
We never had one. I was like, when are we
going to get one? Because
Ngakoue
almost had one. Ngakoue almost had one that Fowler tipped. And I remember, I think that was in the Bills. It was in the Bills game, the last drive of the game when the Bills were driving on Peterman. Before Peterman threw the interception to Ramsey, he threw one and Fowler tipped it up and Ngakoue just barely missed it.
Yeah.
So, I mean.
The word out of Bills camp is Peterman is winning the quarterback battle in Buffalo.
Good for him.
Yeah, why not?
Duval represent.
Yeah, that's right. Let me ask you this. Would you rather see, you're at the game, or you're on TV, wherever, where you like to watch the game. Would you rather see Fournette bust an 80-yard run or pick your defensive player, have a 40 to 50-yard pick six?
Oh, pick six any day. Honestly, if he picked it and returned it, I thought you were going to say returned it 40 50 yards. Then I would be like, oh, that's close.
No, pick six.
But a pick six, oh, yeah, all day. I mean, that's the most exciting thing, especially with our charisma of defensive backs. When they get interceptions, it's like, although Fournette just has some good celebrations. He's
trying to bring the celebrations
to
Jacksonville.
He really is. He was the one that orchestrates them all. He gets all the people in and jumping on people's backs and things like that. I like it. But yeah, no, I mean, I would pick six.
Okay, what about a Keelan Cole 80-yard bomb down the sideline?
I'll pick six. Yeah.
Yeah, pick six.
There's not a lot of things that would trump a pick six.
Pick sixes just are the needle to the balloon for the other team.
Yes.
And it just lets all the air out. And it changes the momentum like crazy. And yeah, I'm with you. I just defensive scores. Usually, when you watch a game on TV, they always say, the team that wins the turnover battle wins the game.
Right.
Well, especially if those turnovers are immediate points.
Touchdowns.
I
yeah.
mean, that's like it, pretty much you always win the game when you have those. So I'll take those any day of the week.
That's what killed us in that 49ers game is all those picks that Blake threw were like in our own territory. And so our defense didn't even have a chance to like stiffen up because 49ers were already in our half of the field.
Yeah. You know, did you hear, by the way, this week that Ramsey was echoing what you've been saying about that 49ers game, like all along?
Yeah, I know. I think he's listening to the podcast.
Yeah, I think he might be.
Yeah.
Jalen, we love you. Come on the podcast.
Yeah, no, I have been saying since the game how it's the most frustrating game I've ever seen because it was just a dink and dunk game.
Mm-hmm.
And then Jalen said the same thing.
I said the exact same thing this week.
I think I went back and looked at it, and I think their fullback might have led their team in receiving yards.
It wouldn't surprise me.
That's what makes you mad about the game.
Yeah. And the fact that they just another West Coast loss, which, by the way, the Jags don't play on the West Coast this year. So that's a good thing.
That is awesome.
I'm happy about that.
Yeah, you said what, Kansas City's the furthest we go west?
Kansas City's the furthest west. Well, I mean, like, unless Dallas, I haven't looked at a map, but maybe Dallas.
Yeah, I guess Dallas would technically be a little further.
Yeah.
Yes,
I don't consider that west, like West Coast.
Right.
It's definitely not West Coast. I guess it's west because it's Dallas, but
I think we'll have no problem with Dallas.
Dallas is so overrated.
Yeah.
Why do people think they're going to be awesome?
I mean, I guess because they had like number 2 rushing offense, so that gives people like, but we had number 1,
Right.
So it's like nice, but we'll one up you.
Allen Hurns is their number 1 receiver, and I love Hurns. He did great things for the Jags, but I'm sorry, you put him against Boye or Ramsey. Come on, are you serious?
I mean, the receiver, and this is the D-line podcast, but the receivers that Jalen's going to get to cover this year, I mean, he's going to eat some of them.
Yeah.
Like up. My favorite to be the week 1 against Odell Beckham.
Yeah.
I mean, I could see another AJ Green incident happening in that game on with Odell Beckham.
Oh man, I can't wait. I can't wait for that game. That game, you think it's going to be a blowout? I'm a little nervous. But I shouldn't be because they have 0 offensive line, and our defensive line, as we've said numerous times tonight, is probably just going to absolutely destroy them and be in Eli Manning's face all game. But you never know with a new coach. You know, they have Saquon Barkley at running back. They got OBJ back. So they have a couple dynamic players on offense.
I mean, their best player is going to be locked down by our best player.
Right.
So I think that's a wash in my opinion. And then you start to just go down the line. Their guard left.
They got
Nate Solder from
Solder from
the
New England.
Patriots. Clay will eat him. That'll be easy.
Yeah.
And Gakpo will get around the edge and
Eli likes to hold on the ball a little bit, so you can see
yeah.
that turnover. And the one thing, if the Jags get up on them, I think the wheels are going to fall off for the Giants pretty quick in that game.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But and who do the Giants have on defense that?
Janoris Jenkins is pretty good. Although they found a dead dude in
they
his
did
house.
find a dead body in his house. Although it's his brother, apparently.
Then Landon Collins is a pretty good player, but he's like supposedly having some contract issues. So I don't even know what the deal is with him. I don't really follow the Giants that closely. But Eli Apple, he's a corner.
Yeah.
He's decent. But outside of those guys,
nah, they ain't anybody.
Nothing. I'm not worried at all.
It's just those first game. The first game of the year.
They're weird sometimes.
They're weird.
Yeah.
And it's on the road.
Yeah.
But I think they're going to win. But it does give me I'm a little concerned.
I'm not at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm less concerned about the Patriots game.
Oh,
what? I swear, I am. I think the Jags are going to destroy the Patriots.
I could see it happening for sure, but I'm definitely more concerned about the Patriots because of Tom Brady.
I should be.
Yeah.
I know I sound like an idiot saying that. But I don't know. For some, I think I just know they're going to win that game.
I mean, we're talking about one of the worst teams in the league versus one of the best teams in the league.
Best teams in the NFL history.
That's true. That's true. But you're right. There is a lot of weird circumstances surrounding it. You're right. But I mean, Evan Ingram, I guess, is another good player they have. They're tight end. But outside of that, the ones we've named, our entire starting 22 you can name as good players. We had,
Yeah, they don't have much there. I don't know. For some reason, it's just it's kind of like the Titans. There's just something about it that I don't know. Just sits a little weird in my stomach. But again, I think they're going to win. I think it'll probably be anywhere from 10 to 14-point differential. I'm just so confident about that Patriots game.
They're definitely going to have like a chip on their shoulder, using Joey's terms.
Yes,
for sure, because they are probably going to be pretty mad.
Yeah,
about
they are.
that. What happened?
And it's the first home game of the year.
It's going to be nice.
That's
it's
New England doesn't really play. Yeah, it is. It's already sold out along with the Pittsburgh Steelers game. At least the lower bowl.
Is that
not the upper bowl, but the lower bowl for both of those games is sold out.
It's a good thing we have field passes.
That's right.
Yeah. We don't have to worry about the sellout.
Those press passes for another Jags podcast.
Yeah. That's a good thing we got this. I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, me too. Well, we are the number one off-season podcast.
That's true. I mean, they don't just give that title out to anybody.
No. So it was right. It was smart of them to do so.
Yeah. I mean, it's not easy to podcast every week.
It's not, clearly, because we're the only ones here.
You got to be committed, but, we understand that sometimes you just want to listen to the Jaguars. You're going to work. You want to get some update on the Jaguars. You want to hear, about what's going on, about the defensive line, and that's why we're here.
Yeah.
That's why we do it.
Listen, we're going to throw in snippets of other things every once in a while, but we're committed to 95% of every podcast, if not 100%, is going to be Jaguars because we love them.
Yeah, we understand that time's valuable. You don't want to be listening to the World Cup.
Yeah. By the way, he's not here. I'm so glad you said that. Joey, our soccer expert who played soccer in college, picked Germany as his team to root for, defending champs, and they just lost in the first round today. So good job, Joey. You're not here to defend yourself, but
is it too late to jump on a team now? I want to jump on Croatia.
No, go ahead.
I want to jump on Croatia.
I could care less. I'm going to go with Sweden.
There you go.
I think they won their group.
Okay.
But they all look alike.
Yeah.
And that's got to be confusing for another team.
That's true. And their last names are kind of all the same.
Yeah, they are.
But
it's been exciting. I've enjoyed watching it.
I haven't watched any of it. So.
Really?
No. I mean, when
I haven't watched a full game. I don't even watch a full half. But when I turn it on and I see it, because it's like 11 and 2 o'clock during the day.
Yeah, I guess that's the problem with it.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it a lot. I'm surprised when people don't get into it. I just think it's very exciting.
All right, thanks for listening to another Jags podcast. Remember, make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Another Jags Podcast and on Twitter at Another Jags Pod. Make sure to tune in next week. We're going to be breaking down the wide receiver position. That's going to be a good one. I mean, we have a lot of guys that are fighting to make the squad at wide receiver. You can only go into the season with about 6, and there's about 9 guys who can realistically make the team. So that's going to be a good one. To make sure to tune into that one. Thanks for listening, and again, as always, go Jags.